I'd like to invite Professor R.Ramakumar to address the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Padmaja Shah, distinguished Professor Prabhat Patnaik. I'm very thankful to the Hyderabad Collective for having invited me to speak on this topic of demonetization. And first of all, I must say that I bring fraternal salutes from the Mumbai Collective to the Hyderabad Collective. On the 8th of November 2016 at 8 p.m. when the Prime Minister spoke to the nation, withdrawing 500 rupee and 1000 rupee notes in circulation, the government, it turns out, if you look at the last 35 days, the Prime Minister asked for 50 days and 35 days have passed, 15 more days remain. The honeymoon is going to end, as they say. So if you look at the last 35 days, what has happened is a sovereign elected government of a country literally confiscated something like 15.4 lakh crores from its people, giving them back only about 5 lakh crore rupees. Something like 10 lakh crore, okay, has been literally confiscated by the government and is not being given to people who actually used to hold or still hold that legal tender. It's an extraordinarily undemocratic act, an assault on a democracy. There is absolutely no doubt. That is why economist after economist, right and left, are totally dismayed by this action, by the complete lack of economic logic that has driven this action. People ask, people say the planning behind this policy was very bad. But I ask, was there ever a plan? Was there ever a plan so that the planning can fail? I want to read out a few points to you. I won't say when it was written and who wrote it. Such an exercise seldom produces striking results. Most people who accept illegal gratification or are otherwise recipients of black money do not keep their ill-gotten earnings in the form of currency. The idea that black money or wealth is held in the form of notes tucked away in suitcases or pillowcases is naive. And in any case, even those who are caught napping or waiting will have the chance to convert the notes through paid agents, as some provision has to be made to convert at par notes tendered in small amounts, for which explanations cannot be reasonably sought by the tax department. But the gesture had to be made, produced much work, and there was little gain. And then the next part of my quote is the following. Long winding queues started forming in front of the Reserve Bank office right from the morning, as also at the main office of the State Bank of India to collect declaration forms. According to press reports, the day started with utter confusion over the issue of declaration forms at the Reserve Bank headquarters at Bombay, and the working hours stretched till 6:30 p.m. Enterprising city printers are said to have made quick money selling forms in sets of 3 for rupees 3. As expected, there were frayed tempers and considerable hue and cry from the public as well as foreign tourists, especially those who did not have documentary proof to support the exchange of notes. The first quote that I read was from the memoirs of I.G. Patel, the former Reserve Bank of India governor, who was governor when the first demonetization of independent India took place in 1978. The rest is from the official history of the Reserve Bank of India, volume number 3, which has a section on demonetization. If I read it out to you today without telling who wrote it or when it was written, you would actually think that it was written on some date after November 8th. That is the kind of, it is true that, as Professor Patnaik was telling me a little while back before the program began, that the demonetization of 1978 was focused more on rupees 5,000 and rupees 10,000 notes, and the ordinary person was not as badly affected as he is today. Nevertheless, you can see from the record of the Reserve Bank of India that even that kind of a demonetization had a crippling impact on everyday economic transactions. Lessons are hardly learned, it appears. And as Marx was to say in 18 Brumaire, it first hits you as a tragedy and then as a farce. The November 8 demonetization appears to be an absolute farce played on the people of this country. Let me be very truthful to the Prime Minister and take his 8th of November speech, where he made 3 major points. The first point that he made was that it will help us attack black money. So before that, it will help us attack counterfeit currency, which is actually being pushed into India via Pakistan and Bangladesh and is used to finance terror in India. The second point that he made was that it will attack or it will help unearth the large amounts of black money in India. Professor Patnaik mentioned that the expectation was something like 3 lakh crore rupees is held as black in India, which is actually, where did this 3 lakh crore come from? The only way, the route from which it could have come from is by applying the 15% money that did not return in 1978 demonetization, apply that to the 15 lakh crore which was in circulation as on November 8th, and then arrive at a rough approximate figure of 3 lakh crore. Otherwise, how could you simply say that 3 lakh crore will come back? Such was the bizarreness of the BJP spokesperson that I come from Kerala. There is a Malayalam BJP spokesperson in Kerala who was literally shouting on the second day of the demonetization, I will do whatever you ask me to do if 3 lakh crore doesn't come back. He was literally so confident about it that 3 lakh crore. That's when we started wondering, where did this number come from? The only way it could have come from is by mechanically applying that 15% to the 15 lakh. So this is the second point that was made. Let us take these announcements seriously, because it was made by an elected Prime Minister of India, and let us try to examine these claims. How much is the amount of counterfeit currency in India? There is no exact estimate. If we knew, life would have been easier. But it's a fact that there is counterfeit currency in India, and all data that is available, 2 sets of data are available on counterfeit currency. One is available from the banking system. How much do banks separate out in terms of counterfeit currency in their everyday economic transactions? Everyday financial transactions, and second is related to how much police and other enforcement agencies confiscate in the course of their everyday actions. Now, if you look at the banking system and the police and you add these 2 numbers together, the total number of counterfeit currency notes identified by banks and police as a share of the total number of 500 and 1000 rupee notes in circulation is 0.00002%. That is the number of share of counterfeit currency that are supposed to be in circulation. The National Investigating Agency, NIA, entrusted the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, in 2012 for a study on counterfeit notes in India. After a detailed study of the different data sources, the ISI Kolkata team arrived at the conclusion that at any point of time, rupees 400 crore is the amount of counterfeit currency that might be in circulation in India. That's the only estimate that they could arrive at. And they actually said in that report that the existing systems of locating and identifying counterfeit currency are more than adequate at the way it is going. Now, this is a situation of counterfeit currency in India. Nobody, if you look carefully at the government narratives, after the second day or so, this point about counterfeit has not sold much anywhere, because they have quietly withdrawn that claim. They have later moved to less cash economy and so on. I will come to that later. So the second claim which was made was related to black money. It will help unearth black money. The point about the assumption behind this scheme, behind this argument being that a lot of money is stored under sofa cum beds and so on, has been already mentioned by Professor Patnaik, and I'm not going to go into that. But let us look at the reports of what tax authorities have to say on this matter. And I'm going to rely a bit on a 2012 report submitted by the chairman of the Central Board of Direct Taxes, CBDT, the Income Tax Department head, to the Ministry of Finance, which later formed an input into the white paper on black money, which was published by the Ministry of Finance in 2012 itself. Now, they make this point that if you look at black money in India, it has 3 major sources: crime, corruption, and business. These are the 3 major sources of black money in India. Of course, the economic structure of India, India's economic structure, which has hardly been reformed after independence. Very little of land reform, very little of spread of universal primary education, very poor penetration of the banking system, predominance of agriculture as a source of employment and income, which is not taxed in the first place, the predominance of the unorganized sector as a whole, which includes agriculture, in the agriculture and non-agricultural sectors of rural areas. All these things combined together create some kind of dependence on cash in the everyday economic transaction. Now, this is often made to look like the circulation of black money everywhere. The unorganized nature of economic transactions is often misunderstood for the blackness of it. The interesting point about black money is my black money is your white and your white is my black. There is absolute, if I create black money and I create an industry with that black money and I pay the worker a wage, it is white for that worker, but it's my black. My black has been turned into white. Marx once made this remark of idle money becoming capital in volume 3 in his volume 3. The point he made was that money, when it is just lying like that in one place, it's useless. But when it is put into this circulation, it becomes capital. So most of these, my black money can become capital and becomes absolutely white and legal. You're not going to trace that black money from me, that same note number from me, through the wage that I paid to the laborer, and catch that laborer and then finally trace me. That's not going to happen. That's not how a black economy operates. So the point that the Income Tax Department made in its reports was that if you look at all these things, the most important is, of course, corruption, which is mostly manifested in election financing and so on. That's where reform is required. Second important point they say is crime. They say that in the developed countries and so on, it's basically illegal trafficking and drug trade which constitutes much of black income. But if you look at developing countries, there's the wider sources of generation of black income and revenue. And if you look at business, which is where a lot of black money is generated, the most important route that businessmen adopt in order to evade income is by inflation of expenditures and deflation of revenue, because you pay the tax on the difference between these two, and most of this is done in terms of sales tax laws also of the states, and then the income from this gets reported as per the income tax rules when you pay income tax in the next year. So what is deflated here becomes deflated there also. As a result, very little tax gets paid both as sales tax and as income tax on both places. They complain, the tax authorities would complain all the time that whenever they go to the court saying that according to the income tax law, this man should have paid more taxes, the business will actually show their returns according to the sales tax law of the state, which actually would show that the income was actually low, and that would be the reason why that guy will be exonerated in the courts when they are charged with the provisions of the Income Tax Act. So all these, there are the maze of laws that we have across India. That's one of the reasons that tax authorities think provides easy ways to generate and store black money. They also argue that a lot of land purchases take place which are not recorded. People simply sell and go away. As a result, capital gains are not on those on those revenues are not paid. A lot of wealth tax is supposed to be paid in gold, which is not paid. A lot of transactions take in the import-export. Trade-based money laundering is a very important part. You actually manipulate your accounts in imports and exports and try to save on tax. You actually do a lot of transfer pricing. You actually show a lot of your taxable income as being generated in low tax jurisdictions and not high tax jurisdictions, and you take away a lot of black money, generate a lot of black money through that route. There is a lot of money that is transacted through NGOs, which are fake many times, which also constitutes a source of black money. A lot of black money also is generated through participatory notes. These are financial derivative instruments generated on Indian financial assets, but issued from outside India, which cannot be monitored by SEBI or other regulatory authorities in India. All these create, and not all these are the main ways in which black money gets generated. And if you really have to attack black money, they say that these are the main areas that you have to attack. Now, in the same report of the chairman of the CBDT, he speaks about a possibility of demonetization. The chairman actually argued that one common demand from the public is that high denomination currency notes, particularly rupees 1,000 and 500, this is 2012 report, okay, rupees 1,500 should be demonetized. In this connection, it is observed that demonetization may not be a solution for tackling black money or economy, which is largely held in the form of binami properties, bullion and jewellery, etc. This was the conclusion of the chairman of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. We know, as Professor Patnaik mentioned a little while back as well, that only about 5 to 6% of what we call as black money, however you define it, is actually probably held in cash. This is the data that is available from the tax authorities themselves for all the confiscations they have made till now. Because when they confiscate all forms, not just cash but also in terms of assets. So according to their data, only about 5 to 6% of these confiscations have been in the form of cash, which is the sofa cum bed story that was mentioned by Professor Patnaik a while back. When that is the situation, demonetization at best can attack only this 5 to 6% of the so-called black money, however you define it, that is being generated. Now, where is this? Let us assume one argument can be made that, look, why do you underestimate this 5 to 6%? This 5 to 6% may be a significant amount in terms of quantum. So maybe it's a good idea to attack 5 to 6% of this through demonetization. Now, if that is the case, that magical figure of rupees 3 lakh crore, which is supposed to have not returned to the banking system, should have come true. In other words, only about 12 lakh crore rupees should have come back to the banking system, while about 15.4 lakh crore is actually in circulation as 500 and 1,000 rupee notes. Now, this, according to the day before yesterday's data, as put out by Mr. Gandhi, who is the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, 12.44 lakh crore has actually already come back to the banking system till day before yesterday. Now, today, Shaktikanta Das has tried a very nasty trick about an hour back in a press conference, where he's actually said a lot of it can actually be double counting. Now, double counting primarily means that a lot of interbank lending might have taken place in between. As a result, State Bank of India receives 100 rupees today. Tomorrow deposited 50 rupees of that in Canara Bank, and that will show us income of the 500 and 1,000 rupee notes that went into Canara Bank from SBI, and hence there is a problem of double counting here. This is nothing but a lie, because if you look at how this money is calculated, there are two methods of calculating this amount that is returned to bank. One is, of course, SBI received X amount today, Canara Bank received Y amount today, Syndicate Bank received Z amount today, and you add X plus Y plus Z and find an amount, and then that has a possibility of double counting. What does not have a possibility of double counting is when the RBI calculates these numbers from the currency chests of the Reserve Bank. When the money is calculated according to the currency chests of the Reserve Bank, there is absolutely no room for double counting. Mr. Gandhi, in his press conference, the transcript of that is the RBI website, makes this very clear point that rupees 12.44 lakh has come back to the banks as per the currency chests. That means there is absolutely no room for double counting in this. Now, in other words, 12.44 lakh indeed has come back with no possibility of double counting in between. Now, what is remaining? Large number of cooperative banks in India, particularly in Maharashtra and Kerala, where they are powerful, are sitting on stocks of old 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, which they are not allowed to transact. They can neither give loans to people. They cannot deposit this money with other banks or Reserve Bank of India and change them. It runs to tens of thousands of crores. The actual number is still not known, but it runs to tens of thousands of crores. This money is lying in the lockers of the cooperative banks of different. This is yet to be added. Some people argue that the lot of hundis of temples and all are not yet opened, and that money is yet to come to the bank kitty. When that comes, that will get added. A lot of Indian currency continues to be transacted and be accepted as legal tender in Nepal and Bhutan, where the Indian rupee is as good as their local currency. A lot of Indians have purchased land in Nepal after November 8th, all using 500,000 rupee notes of the older order. And this has actually been, this is going to come back at some point, because the Nepal Central Bank and the Bhutan Central Bank have not yet come to the RBI and submitted all their rupees and 500,000 rupee notes. A lot of Indians, a friend of mine who works in Amherst in the United States told me recently that he wanted to come to India, take a flight to India from New York in December, and he's unable to do so because flight fares have gone up significantly. I asked him why, because he said a lot of Indians in here are sitting on old 5 lakh, 6 lakh rupees, or 6 lakhs, 7 lakhs rupees in old 500,000 rupee notes. They are going to come back to India before December 31st to give this money back, because that's when the vacation time starts there. Now, this money is yet to come back to the Indian banking system. A lot of people, I must admit, I don't have a lot of money in old currency, a few thousands I have. It's in my home. I'm waiting for the queues to thin down so that I can go to the bank and deposit in my account. And millions of people like me, I'm sure, exist across India. A lot of people are not going to come back because they don't want to stand in the queue and so on, as Professor Patnaik mentioned. All this has to be added to this 12.44 crore. A joke that went around was that maybe the money that comes back will actually be more than 15.4 lakh crore, because banks have suspended. Remember, the whole idea was to attack counterfeit currency. After November 8th, no bank has checked for counterfeit currency. Very few banks have checked for counterfeit currency when they accepted notes from the public, because there was no time. There is a violent queue of 1,000 to 500 people waiting outside the bank. You just take the money and record it. That's it. There has been absolutely no time to check how much of this is counterfeit. It is quite possible that we are in an ironical situation where a scheme which has purportedly begun to attack counterfeit currency has actually legalized enormous amounts of counterfeit currency in the Indian economy. We are in such a bizarre situation after November 8th. Anything can happen. So this shows that the whole argument that this scheme is supposed to attack black money is again stands on very weak grounds, may I say. Very little money is going to come back to the banking system, as Professor Patnaik was kind enough, generous enough, may I say, to say that rupees 1 lakh crore may not come back. I will be really surprised if even that kind of money that will not come back. If everything is going smoothly, there is some money that people might have lost during natural calamities and so on. That will never, of course, come back to the banking system, other than those who really don't want to stand in the queue for 3 hours to change just 2,000 rupees or so. Other than all these minor matters, a lot of money is ultimately going to come back to the banking system. We will be very close to 15.4 lakhs. Now, another way, of course, another part of this 5 to 6% that black money that exists in cash has already been laundered. You have heard of the great Mumbai-Kolkata route, whereby a cash surplus firm in Mumbai gives a loan to a cash deficit firm in Kolkata, which in turn gives a post-dated check to the Mumbai firm, which will be encashed not now only, but only in the June of 2017 or so. A lot of money that actually existed as black, which was really black, has actually been converted into legal tender, not legal tender, as legitimate income, legitimate money in this form. We are aware of the great Nagaland route of converting black into white, because there is very little tax. The tribal population of Nagaland is not taxed from their incomes. People saw some 7 to 8 chartered flights flying between Hisar in Haryana to Nagaland, and when a random check was made, some 35 crore was found in one of those flights, and the argument made was that the person in Nagaland who does not need to pay tax said that I paid this 35 crore to this gentleman in Haryana in order to purchase a land plot in Haryana 2 years back. But now, after 2 years, that deal has fallen apart. The deal is not happening. He was actually returning me back that 35 crore. Now, that is legitimate because it can come back to you, and I will not pay tax on it because I am a Nagaland citizen. So that is legitimate income for me. Across India, the average rate on which 1 crore rupees would be turned into white is 16% or so. That is, if you pay 1 crore in 500 and 1000 of old denomination, you will get back 84 lakh of new currency. All the new confiscations that the income tax department has been so happily doing these days is of 2000 rupee denominations. Nobody knows how people got these 2000 rupee denomination notes, and all of the incriminated banks are private sector banks. All of the incriminated banks are private sector banks. Very few of public sector banks have been involved in this kind of money laundering business. That's another thing that has come very clear. One must applaud the great patience and the great commitment shown by public sector bank employees who despite the constant threats thrown at them by the government of India of privatization, telling them that they are inefficient, telling them that they should be privatized and so on, they have without any complaint worked till 12 o'clock in the night, attended to the last person in the queue and then gone home for a 3-hour nap because he has to come back at 6 o'clock in the morning and take charge again. Amazing role they have played. Once this is over, the same argument of inefficiency is sure to be tossed on them again when the cycle of privatization is likely to begin again. And of course, a lot of blame is also sought to be put on the poor. The poor laundered the money for the rich by taking their money through Jan Dhan accounts. Nothing can be more criminalizing for the poor. If you look at the total amount of money that the Jan Dhan accounts have obtained between after November 8, it is only about 27,000 crore. 27,000 crore in millions of bank deposits. On an average, it accounts to something like rupees 1,000 per account. Rupees 1,000 per account is the average that has possibly come into a Jan Dhan account. And with this kind of paltry amount that is coming to the bank, that too, this money is likely to come, not as savings. The guy would have come for a new note, and the bank has said, we don't have a new note, we are accepting it, putting it in your deposit, come again when the note comes, which is nobody knows when that note will come. So a lot of this is forced savings, confiscation, as I said, without any plan to give them back. Now, this is another way in which an absurd form of burden has been sought to be imposed on the people. I mentioned this because I wanted to take the two claims of the Prime Minister as on November 8th seriously. I wanted to address and see how reliable those claims are. Now, the Prime Minister made another announcement related to less cash or cashless economy. I will come to that in a while, but just I'll spend 2 minutes on another matter. I'll come back to this. That's related to implementation. Now, one of the most important points that is made with respect to the demonetization thing is Professor Patnaik asked, why couldn't they be given more time in order to put this money, sort of transact this money for a longer time and so on. The argument of the government to that, possible response of the government to that argument would be that secrecy was required. Now, secrecy was required for this kind of an action. Now, I want to show you, this is not new, it has already come out in the public domain. This is the SBI Economic Department, headed by the Chief Economist Soumya Kanti Ghosh. Their monthly publication called EcoRap. Now, EcoRap had an issue in April 2016. April 2016. The announcement was in November 2016. Now, at that point of time, Raghuram Rajan had made this point that there is a surge in deposits that is taking place into bank accounts, and that's possibly because this is an election year. Raghuram Rajan likes to think wild a bit, so he made this hypothesis, he put forward this hypothesis that it might be because of this. So Soumya Kanti Ghosh writes this response to Raghuram Rajan where he argues that no, it is not because it's an election year, because earlier election years have also, we have seen many election years, this kind of deposit increase has not taken place. Now, He says, April 2016, why have deposits increased in the banks suddenly? His answer is, there has been a suggestion that is doing the rounds that higher denomination notes of rupees 1,000 and rupees 500 be demonetized. This is possibly the reason, he argues, for the higher deposits that you see in the banking system. He concludes it by saying that the news of the demonetization of currencies of denomination 500 and 1,000 has been doing the rounds for a while. Only we didn't know it. And this may be a plausible reason for the increase of currency with the public. The rationale for this is that people are taking out cash and buying other assets such as gold, so that when the currency is demonetized, they do not face a problem. In other words, you have your black cash, you actually use it to buy land, and that money goes into circulation because the buyer of that land actually puts it in the banks or puts that into circulation. Now, this, he argued, in April 2016 regarding a policy which is, in fact, the Prime Minister gets a lot of praise these days for keeping it such a secret. One of the points that one person made in a TV channel was, imagine a Congress government. This would have gone out. This only 3 or 4 people knew about this, and not a word went out. Look at all these reports that have been published. Now, this report also made this point that no, this may not be a great idea. However, while this is doing the rounds, demonetization may not be a bad idea, because ATMs would be in deep trouble. Because if you load. That means you will have to give more of 100 rupee notes. The State Bank of India's Union Chief, Federation Chief, Thomas Franco, has made this very interesting point. He said, one ATM, if it is filled completely with 100 rupee notes, can take 2.1 lakh rupees at a point of time. That means if you allow 2,000 rupees limit for one withdrawal, only 105 people can actually withdraw from an ATM in a day, assuming everybody takes 2,000. Now, while the queue runs to 300, 400 and so on. SBI's report actually in April 2016 warned that if one replenishment of ATM is usually done on an average, with demonetization, you will have to do 4 replenishments in a day, 3.57 or so replenishments a day, and that is too much of a burden on the banking system, and it should not be done. It's a bad idea. Now, this was a point that they warned about at that point of time. Till we are told that it was well planned and so on. Somebody had warned it quietly in April 2016 itself. And this basically shows the absolute lack of planning with which this was undertaken, and the blame for this squarely lies with the Reserve Bank of India. Professor Patnaik also would agree with me on this. We had a large number of differences with R.Ramakumar and his policies and so on. But there was at some point, at some level, he maintained some level of dignity and autonomy to that institution. With all the disagreements that we had with him at different points of time, the story will come out only later. He has said that I will not speak about India for a year, and that time maybe the real story of he not getting an extension might come out. But it's very clear by now that the Reserve Bank of India did not adequately tell the government, nor did the government do its homework on the perils of this kind of an action on everyday economic transactions. The Reserve Bank of India and its governor, deputy governor and so on should more than know that if you simply take out 86% of the currency from the economy, how much time will it take to replenish that kind of note stock? Absolute zero homework. Even if homework was done, zero planning, zero preparation, this has thrown everyday economic transactions in India into a completely bizarre, haywire situation. Everyday economic transactions have been crippled, particularly in rural India and so on, where most of the transactions happen in cash. Look at rural areas, look at farmers. Remember, after about 2011 or so, the agriculture in India has hardly grown. The average growth rate of agricultural GDP, value added in agriculture, may I say, after 2011, on an average is about 1.5% per year. That's the kind of growth rate agriculture has seen. Now, that's primarily because of poor monsoons, inadequate and unseasonal rainfalls and so on. But 2016-17 was supposed to be different for Indian agriculture. Farmers were looking forward to a better crop in Kharif and a larger Rabi sowing because the rains in 2017 were much better. So those 2016 were much better. So basically, after 2 or 3 years of poor incomes, they were looking forward to a good income, good crop, good returns from their crop in this season. Now, Kharif harvests have come in. If you look at data on market arrivals, compare 2015 November and 2016 November, 2015 December and 2016 December, you see very clearly a very sharp fall in the arrivals, market arrivals of agricultural crops, soybean, maize, rice and so on. You see traders are not picking up grains from the yards of farmers or groups of farmers, and this is simply not reaching the market. And in many places, prices have fallen. Very little amount of commodities are arriving into the market, and Kharif harvest, which was supposed to be a jackpot for the farmers after a long period of time, has turned out to be a tragedy. Farmers are likely to obtain a much lower income after demonetization that they would have got without demonetization. That's very clear. You can argue about whether it is a 5% fall or a 10% fall, but there is going to be a sharp fall is going to be undoubted. This is also affecting Rabi sowing. We still do not know whether wheat will be sown in something like 300 lakh hectares in 2016-17. Government has been comparing data with the previous year, which was actually a drought year, and the area sown was actually less. So you are actually comparing a good year's area with a bad year's area, and obviously you will get a very rosy result at the end of it. So we still do not know how much Rabi sowing is affected, but peasantry, the cost of sowing for the peasantry in this Rabi season has significantly gone up. They have been facing real difficulties in buying seeds and fertilizers. They have been relying on informal money lending to generate capital in order to sow. To sow 1 acre of wheat would cost something like 5,000 rupees just to meet the cost of seeds, labor and fertilizer. That means 20,000 rupees for a 5-acre farm, which is the weekly limit allowed if you reach the end of the queue at the end of the day. Now, this has seriously affected Rabi sowing. Farmers are using old saved seeds. They are not using certified seeds as a result. In other words, they are using poor quality saved seeds this season, which will yield something like 20% low on an average compared to certified seeds. So the quality of sowing is likely to be poorly affected, and if the Rabi harvest is in serious threat. We still do not know how much will come. The government data is very hard to believe. We are in real soup because of the government data for previous year regarding wheat production. The new controversy related to the import duty on wheat actually shows how poor and pathetic government statistical system on data on area and production is, and the data that is put out by the government on sowing in the Rabi season appears highly suspect for someone like me. So as a result, rural demand has fallen. Even big companies like Hindustan Unilever, who sell a lot of FMCG goods in the rural market, are complaining that trade is down by something like 50%. And basically, because there is very little capital investment that takes place in the Indian economy, basically it's government spending, which is always limited by fiscal deficit fears of the government, and consumer spending, which basically ends up driving GDP growth. And if consumer spending really falls, which in turn is connected to how much of rural demand exists in an economy, or it grows in that economy, the fall of rural demand is likely to adversely affect GDP growth as well. Now we can argue about how much that is likely to be. Manmohan Singh says 2%, Ambit Capital independent consulting firm says 3.5%, and we will know soon where this is going to land up. But very clearly, rural incomes are under threat. Rural demand has shrunk, and it will have a very clear adverse impact on the GDP growth prospects for the next year. This is something that has been accepted by people like Arun Jaitley, Arvind Panagaria and Arvind Subramaniam, who very clearly see it, however, lasting only for the third and fourth quarters of this year. They think it will pick up in the first quarter of 2017-18, but as Professor Patnaik mentioned, the impacts most of them are likely to be permanent, and it will take a lot of quarters for the economy to actually come back to the situation where it was. In other words, this demonetization policy that was effected after November 8 is nothing. I come back to the point that I began with: an assault on the Indian people. To say that everyday economic transactions are affected is an understatement. That is of course true. It has created a large, enormous pain and misery to people. But more than that, it is a loss of credibility. It is a loss of trust in your sovereign government. Economists speak about sovereign default. It's supposed to be a big thing in economics, because if the government defaults on a loan, then the economy's trustworthiness is completely in shatters. This is nothing but sovereign default. You have a note which says, I agree to pay this much amount, and you go to the bank and say, no. This is nothing but sovereign default. This has, in that sense, it is an assault on the democratic foundations of on which this capitalist economy called India has flourished after 1947. Let's be very clear on that. That's possibly one reason why the left-right distinction in the commentaries on demonetization have blurred a lot. There is not one serious right-wing economist, if there are any, who have actually ended up supporting demonetization. The best that the ruling party could field was a chartered accountant. So that is okay, less said about the chartered accountant, the better. That is the state of our public discourse today. Now, why is this not leading to a kind of a movement? Point that Professor Patnaik made. Well, only a sustained movement on the ground, sustained struggles on the ground can see. A lot of people you speak to do say, let's give this man 50 days. A lot of people say that. No? A lot of poor people say it. The poor people, a lot of these people actually think that the rich are also affected, so we will take a bit of the hit. No? And it's true, and I with complete respect to the agency of these people who speak to me, I wish there was more awareness that we created, there was more knowledge, more information that we put out to show to these people how much the rich have come out completely unscathed from this policy of demonetization, and the only people who are adversely affected by this policy are the lower middle class and the poor. There is a great campaign of misinformation that has been unleashed in India today in favor of a cashless economy and so on. I would love to answer some of those questions if there are in the question and answer session. I should not take a lot of time now. But there again lies great dangers. The introduction of Aadhaar scheme in a completely undemocratic manner, its escalation into what is called as India Stack, which completely throws basic principles of privacy into thin air. These are all issues. The complete absence of a privacy law in India, the space that cashless banking opens up for surveillance by the state, the absence of cybersecurity laws in India, all these are simply not discussed in India when the whole arguments for cashless economy are put forward. There is absolutely no legal framework on which this cashless economy can be erected at this point. Still we speak about Paytm and other forms of MobiQuick and so on, but the legal framework that governs these kinds of transactions are very weak. So I would end it here, and I would basically say that only consistent struggles on the ground. We need to really move into a very conscious and widespread dissemination program on this adverse impacts of demonetization. We need to tell people what kind of fraud they have been pushed into. We need to tell them, give them numbers. We need to provide them with data. We need to provide them with examples on how the rich have completely been left unscathed by this, and it's basically the poor that have been cornered in this kind of with this kind of a policy. Thank you.